Sarah Mitchell kept her eyes down as she walked through the crowded mess hall at Fort Carson. The morning sun streamed through high windows, casting shadows that mirrored the secrets she carried. Joining the Army 3 years ago, she had become a master of being invisible. Nobody really knew Private Mitchell. She did her job, never complained, and kept a distance that few dared to cross. To some, she was stuck up. To others, she was just shy. The truth was far more dangerous. The truth was something she carried locked deep inside, hidden beneath her uniform. But in a place like Fort Carson, where the morning sun highlights every flaw, the past has a way of refusing to stay buried. "You hear about the new sergeant?" Corporal Jenkins asked. "Transferred in from overseas, supposed to be a real hard case." Sarah just nodded, focusing on her meal. She didn't want to hear about hard cases. She just wanted to survive. Sergeant Marcus Drake arrived with a reputation that preceded him like a storm cloud. Tough, demanding, and absolutely intolerant of what he perceived as weakness. He carried his combat tours in every sharp word. From day one, Drake changed everything. He ran drills harder and showed no patience for mistakes. Most soldiers grumbled, but Sarah simply did what she always did. She kept her head down and followed every order to the letter. The trouble started in the armory. Sarah was cleaning her rifle when Drake stopped at her station. "You missed a spot, Mitchell," he said, his voice cutting through the quiet. "Are you questioning me, Private?" Sarah felt the tension snap. "Then clean it again, and this time, do it right." Drake wasn't just checking weapons. He was establishing dominance. Sarah had become his chosen target, singled out at every opportunity for the slightest perceived flaw. This wasn't about the weapon. This was about control. Drake took satisfaction in trying to break through her calm exterior. He didn't know her past, but he could feel the wall she'd built, and he wanted it down. Over the following weeks, Drake was relentless. Her uniform, her salute, her response time, nothing was ever good enough. Sarah waved off the help of others. She had handled worse than Sergeant Marcus Drake, or so she told herself. The breaking point came during a field exercise. Exhausted and under the hot afternoon sun, Sarah hesitated for just a moment to catch her breath. Drake was on her instantly. "What are you doing, Mitchell? Daydreaming? I don't care what you needed. When I give an order, you move." "Yes, sir!" she shouted back. In that moment, she saw satisfaction in his eyes. He enjoyed breaking people, and that's when Sarah realized she couldn't keep running. No matter how far she ran, there would always be a Drake, someone who pushed until there was nothing left to hide behind. The storm was here, and everyone would finally see what she had worked so hard to keep hidden. In the geometry of combat, truth is the only survivor. The past is no longer buried, to be continued.
The next morning, Sarah woke before dawn, her body tense and her mind racing. She had barely slept. She was replaying the previous day's humiliation over and over. She knew she couldn't keep going like this. Something had to change. She went through her morning routine on autopilot, dressing in her uniform, making her bed with military precision. The others greeted her with sympathetic looks, but nobody said anything. Nobody wanted to be Drake's next target. Jenkins caught up with her. He asked if she was doing okay. Some of the unit wanted to file a formal complaint, but Sarah said no. The last thing she wanted was more attention, more people digging into her background. Going to the captain would force her to explain things she had sworn never to talk about again. The day passed in a blur of training exercises. Drake continued his pattern of criticism, but Sarah barely heard him. She remembered being 15, small and scared, living in a house where violence was as common as breathing. Her father was a decorated hero who came home with demons he couldn't control. He drank to drown them. Her mother left when Sarah was 12. Sarah didn't blame her. Sometimes she wished she had gone too. The scars he left weren't just physical. They were carved into her soul, shaping the way she saw the world. At 18, she enlisted. It was her escape, her chance to become someone different, someone stronger. But she had made one permanent, visible reminder, a secret that could change everything if anyone ever saw it. The tattoo was beautiful, a phoenix rising from the flames, wings spread wide, eyes fierce and determined. From the ashes, I rise. From the pain, I find strength. I am not what was done to me. I am what I choose to become. 7 names, 7 people who pulled her from the darkness. The last was Captain James Mitchell. She had taken his name as her own, to honor the man who showed her that strength didn't have to mean cruelty. Lisa Chen walked in. She told Sarah it was okay to not be fine, that what Drake was doing was abuse. Sarah felt something crack. The kindness was almost too much to bear. She had built walls for so long. She wanted to admit she was drowning, but the fear was too strong. She insisted on dealing with it alone. The pressure was building. The past and present were colliding. Something was going to break, and soon. She just didn't know it would happen the very next day.
The morning started like any other, with formation at 0600 hours. The air was cool and crisp, but beneath the stillness of the parade ground, a long simmering tension was about to reach its breaking point. Drake walked the lines, a ghost of authority in the dim light. When he reached Sarah Mitchell, he stopped. The scrutiny was different today, sharper, edged with a malice that made the air feel heavy. "Mitchell," he said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Step forward." Sarah obeyed, her heart sinking, standing alone before the unit as the tension in the ranks became palpable. Drake ordered her to turn. It was a classic power play, an assertion of dominance designed to humiliate. He claimed her uniform was wrinkled, a lie they both knew, but a trap she couldn't escape. "Are you calling me a liar, Private?" The question was a technical ambush. To say yes was insubordination. To say no was to admit to a failure that didn't exist. She was being pushed to snap. Sarah forced out the words he wanted, her jaw tight. But Drake wasn't finished. He reached out and grabbed the back of her shirt, his rough handling triggering a memory she had spent a lifetime trying to outrun. Suddenly, it was 15 years ago. Her father's shouting, the same rough grip on her clothes. The parade ground tilted as the past rushed forward, overwhelming her discipline with pure primal panic. "Don't touch me!" The words echoed across the silent formation. The air went cold. In that single, desperate shout, she had committed the one act that could end everything she had built. Drake's face darkened with fury. He reached for her again, grabbing her shoulder with enough force that the fabric tore. The ripping sound was impossibly loud in the silence, the sound of a secret being laid bare. Drake froze. The anger drained from his face as he stared at her back. There, rising from her skin, was the phoenix she had worked so hard to hide. Beneath it, a name, Captain James Mitchell. "You're Jim's kid?" Drake asked. The aggressive posture was gone, replaced by a look that bordered on grief. The man who had been her tormentor was suddenly looking at her as if he'd seen a ghost. "Jim saved my life," Drake whispered. "In Fallujah, I was pinned down, and he came back for me when everyone else had retreated. He carried me half a mile under fire. He died getting me to safety." Sarah managed to speak, her voice breaking. "He wasn't my real father," she told him, "but he saved me too, in a different way." Drake saw the moment he put it together, realizing the legacy he had attacked. Drake finally understood the geometry of her movement, the technical precision she used to mask the trauma he had just reopened. He sought to assert power, only to find himself powerless. "Oh God," he whispered, "what have I done?" Sarah Mitchell walked off that parade ground with her head high. She had risen from the ashes once, and she would do it again. That is the Mitchell standard. For the ground report, stay disciplined, stay human.
The silence on the parade ground stretched on, heavy and uncomfortable. A moment that would change everything for Sarah. Drake stood frozen, staring at Sarah's tattoo as if he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. Her secret was out, exposed for the entire unit to witness. She felt naked and vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with her physical state. The damage was done. Everyone had seen. "Dismissed," Drake said suddenly. "Everyone back to your barracks. Formation is over." His voice was hoarse, his authority masking a brewing storm. The soldiers hesitated, not quite sure if they had heard correctly. Drake never dismissed formation early. They began to disperse, casting backward glances. Jenkins reluctantly followed the others, leaving Sarah and Drake alone. The morning light seemed at odds with the darkness of the moment. "Wait," Drake said. He pulled off his own jacket and handed it to her. It was too big, but it gave her a measure of dignity back. "My office," Drake said. They walked in silence. Sarah knew what was coming. A reprimand, possibly a discharge. Her military career was over, but Drake's office wouldn't hold a reprimand. It held a confession that had been decades in the making. Drake's office was small and sparse. He stood by the window, his back to her. "How long did it last?" he asked finally. "The abuse from your father? I've been doing the same thing to you. Targeting you, breaking you down, using my authority to hurt you, making you afraid." Sarah didn't know what to say. The fear she had felt every day under his command was the same fear she had lived with as a teenager. "You reminded me of someone. A soldier from my last deployment. I thought she was weak. She died because I pushed her too hard. I've been carrying that guilt ever since. She got caught in an ambush. By the time we got to her, it was too late. I was trying to prove I was right to push her. That it wasn't my fault she died. Captain Mitchell talked about you once. He said she was the strongest person he knew. He showed me I could be something more. To prove I could be the person he believed I was. I almost destroyed that," Drake said. "I'm so incredibly sorry." The apology hung in the air. Sarah wasn't ready to forgive. "There need to be consequences. I'm recommending you for transfer. A fresh start. And I'm requesting reassignment myself. I need to work through my own issues. Being strong doesn't mean pretending you're not hurt. It means having the courage to ask for help when you need it. Captain Mitchell would want you to take care of yourself." Sarah left the office, stepping out into the bright morning sun. She had survived a battle she hadn't even known she was fighting. The journey continues. The Mitchell standard remains.
News of the incident spread through the base like wildfire. By lunchtime, the morning's events were the only topic of conversation. The details varied wildly. Some said Sarah had attacked Drake. Others claimed it was the other way around. The truth was buried under speculation. Sarah spent the morning in her barracks, avoiding the world. She stared at the papers Drake had given her, a path to an exit she wasn't sure she wanted. When her roommates returned, Chen was the first to sit beside her. She didn't ask for a report. She offered her side, no matter what. They had witnessed Drake's treatment of Sarah for months. They had seen her struggle and watched her withdraw into herself. For so long, Sarah believed vulnerability was weakness. But looking at them, she felt a shift in her own armor. "Drake tore my shirt," she said slowly. "It exposed my tattoo, the one on my back." The room fell into a heavy silence. Sarah took a deep breath and began. It was about her past, before the army, before the discipline. It was about her father. Her father was a Marine who came back from war different, angry, violent. He took it out on her for 5 years. It only stopped when Captain Mitchell found out. He was the reason she was here, wearing this uniform. The names on her skin were those who helped her survive. Mitchell was the last because he was the one who started it all. Mitchell had saved Drake's life in Iraq, dying in the process. Drake hadn't known the connection until he saw that ink. Drake was haunted by a soldier he lost on his last deployment. Sarah reminded him of her, so he took his guilt out on her. Martinez was blunt. Sarah didn't deserve any of it. No matter what ghosts Drake was fighting, she wasn't his target. Drake was recommending a transfer, but Sarah was tired of running from her history, tired of trying to be invisible. When Jenkins arrived, Sarah admitted the hardest truth. She had let it go on because she thought she deserved it. Her father spent years telling her she was worthless. When Drake treated her the same way, part of her believed he was right. Chen was adamant. "You're one of the best soldiers in this unit. Drake was wrong, and so was your father." Sarah knew believing that would take time, but for the first time, she wasn't walking that path alone. The reflection was cut short. Lieutenant Harris arrived with a summons. The captain wanted to see her in his office. Harris told her half the base was on her side. Sarah walked toward the command building, bracing for the fallout. Nothing could have prepared her for what she found waiting in the captain's office. The truth was about to get complicated. In the clinical environment of military leadership, exposure is often mistaken for weakness. For Private Sarah Mitchell, standing in the office of Captain Reynolds, the air was thick with the weight of unseen history. Reynolds was a stern man, eyes sharp enough to see through her armor. She wasn't alone. Dr. Patricia Warren, a trauma specialist, and Major David Chen from the Inspector General's office sat waiting. The presence of the IG meant one thing: an official investigation into the conduct of Sergeant Drake. This was no longer just a conversation. "You're not in trouble, Sarah," Dr. Warren said gently. "We're here to help you." Sarah nodded, but the words felt like echoes of the past, of therapists who had meant well, but couldn't erase the pain. She kept her back straight, waiting for the blow that usually followed kindness. Captain Reynolds delivered the news. Sergeant Drake had confessed. In an act of unexpected remorse, he had provided a detailed account of 3 months of calculated harassment. He was requesting disciplinary action against himself, a rare admission of failure in a system built on hierarchy. But the confession had a cost. Drake had shared information about Sarah's background, the trauma she had survived as a minor, and the intervention of Captain James Mitchell. Her past, once private and sealed, was now part of the official record. The boundaries she built were being dismantled. "I didn't want this," Sarah said, her voice tight. Major Chen was firm. Allegations of abuse of authority must be investigated. It wasn't about what she wanted. It was about the integrity of the army. The machine was moving, and Sarah was at its center, exposed. Sarah struggled with the anger. She understood Drake, his trauma, the loss of his soldier, the projection of guilt. She had empathy for her tormentor. But Major Chen was clear. Explanation does not equal excuse. Abuse is a violation of law, regardless of the perpetrator's pain. Strength, Dr. Warren suggested, wasn't about enduring abuse in silence. It was about acknowledging the harm. You can understand a person's pain and still recognize that they hurt you. This was a paradigm shift for Sarah, a move from survival to processing. Then came the words she had needed for decades. "It was not your fault," Reynolds said. Not with her father, and not with Drake. The weight hit her like a physical blow. The years of believing she deserved the abuse began to fracture. The clinical room became a sanctuary. Sarah let herself cry. For the girl she was, for the soldier she had become, and for the man who saved her. The tears weren't a sign of weakness. They were the sound of pressure releasing from a valve that had been closed too tight for too long. She was finally human. The phoenix on her back had risen from ashes before. Now it was time for Sarah to do the same. She chose to stay at Fort Carson, to stop running and start building something lasting. The investigation would be draining, but she wasn't carrying the load alone anymore. As she stepped back out into the sun, the world looked different. The healing had finally begun. Sarah Mitchell was no longer just a survivor of history. She was the architect of her own future. The Mitchell standard was finally her own.
Captain Reynolds was a stern man in his 50s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. Sarah had only met him a few times at Fort Carson. Standing in his office now, she felt exposed and vulnerable. But Reynolds wasn't alone. With him were Dr. Patricia Warren, a psychologist, and Major David Chen from the Inspector General's office. "Private Mitchell," Reynolds said, gesturing to a chair. "Please sit down." Sarah sat, her back straight, waiting for the blow. Reynolds introduced them, one to help with trauma, the other to initiate an official investigation. Sarah's pulse quickened. "I want you to know you're not in trouble, Sarah," Dr. Warren said gently. "We're here to help you, not to punish you." Then the truth came out. Sergeant Drake had gone to the captain's office that morning and confessed to everything. He admitted to inappropriate conduct and abuse of authority. He was formally requesting disciplinary action against himself. He also shared her connection to Captain James Mitchell, believing it was relevant to the context of his behavior. Sarah tensed. Her past was supposed to be private, locked away. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't asked for an investigation. "It's not about what you want," Major Chen explained. "It's about ensuring other soldiers aren't subjected to the same treatment." Dr. Warren was firm. What Drake did was wrong. It was abuse. And it wasn't something she had to carry alone, Sarah protested. She wanted to understand him. She was tired of being angry. She just wanted to move forward. She thought of the phoenix on her back. Maybe strength wasn't enduring in silence. Maybe it was speaking up. "What do you need from me?" she asked. She would cooperate. She would talk to Dr. Warren. She wouldn't handle it alone. Captain Reynolds looked at her and said the words she had needed to hear. "It was not your fault." And for the first time in years, Sarah let herself cry. For the girl she'd been, for the soldier she'd become, and for her past. Major Chen pulled out a recorder. "Whenever you're ready." Sarah took a breath and began to talk. She detailed the months of harassment, and as she spoke, the weight began to feel lighter. The valve was finally open. Drake would face the consequences. A formal reprimand, mandatory counseling, and a transfer. He would get help too. Reynolds offered her a transfer. She refused. She was done running. She wanted to stay and build something lasting. Dr. Warren would see her twice a week, and Sarah had her friends. It was time to let them in. As she stepped into the sun, Fort Carson didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like a place where she might belong. The road ahead would be long, but for the first time, Sarah Mitchell was ready to stop running. The phoenix had risen.
3 weeks after the investigation, Sarah Mitchell walked into a small tattoo parlor. She wasn't looking for a new story. She was looking to finish the one she already had. She showed Maya the phoenix on her back, a memorial of names who had saved her. But today, she was adding one more name to the bottom of that list, her own. She had realized that while others helped, she had saved herself too. The sting of the needle felt purposeful this time, a marking of a transformation from victim to survivor. Back on base, the atmosphere had shifted. Policy changes were being implemented and the old culture was under fire. Sarah tried to stay invisible, but courage like hers is hard to hide. 2 days later, Captain Reynolds called an all-unit formation. He spoke of accountability and of a soldier who had the courage to stand up when it cost her everything. Private Sarah Mitchell, front and center. In front of the entire unit, she was presented with the Army Commendation Medal for her exceptional performance and personal courage. As the unit broke into applause, Sarah realized she wasn't defined by what was done to her, but by how she responded. She had transformed her silence into a powerful voice. Sarah Mitchell had risen from the ashes of her past. The moment that felt like the end of the world was actually her beginning, and she was just getting started.
Captain Reynolds was a stern man in his 50s with sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. Sarah stood in his office feeling exposed and vulnerable. He introduced Dr. Patricia Warren, a psychologist, and Major David Chen from the Inspector General's office. An official investigation was beginning. Reynolds revealed that Sergeant Drake had confessed to inappropriate conduct. He was requesting disciplinary action against himself. Drake had also shared her past, her connection to Captain James Mitchell. Her private trauma was no longer a secret. "I didn't want this," Sarah said. But Major Chen countered that it was about ensuring other soldiers aren't subjected to the same treatment. "It was abuse, Sarah," Dr. Warren said gently. "And just like what you experienced from your father, it's not something you should carry alone." "I don't want to be angry anymore," Sarah whispered. "I've spent my whole life being angry. I just want to move forward." She cried for the girl she had been, the soldier she had become, and the mentor she had lost. For the first time, she let herself feel it all. When the tears subsided, she gave her statement. Giving voice to the harm felt like releasing a pressure valve that had been closed too long. She refused a transfer. She wouldn't run anymore. She would stay and build something lasting, here at Fort Carson, on her own terms. She realized she didn't have to handle it alone. It was time to trust Chen, Martinez, and the others, to build a real network of support. The phoenix on her back had risen from ashes. Now it was time for Sarah to do the same. The journey to healing had finally begun.
4 months after the incident that changed everything, Sarah Mitchell found a new purpose: mentorship and resilience. Speaking to new recruits, she shared a truth she once feared, that asking for help is one of the strongest things a soldier can do. Then came an email from Maria Rodriguez, the sister of a soldier Drake had lost. a message of gratitude that changed her perspective. Maria told her, "Your courage to report misconduct honored my sister's memory in a way I never could. Thank you for your strength." Sarah joined the foundation in Emma's name, turning her pain into policy and her lived experience into a shield for others. She was no longer just surviving. She was building a future where no one had to face the shadows alone. From the ashes, Sarah Mitchell had risen, and she was just getting started.